Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. In this video, we're going to talk about the Sage Dynamics Cadence Standards, Part 1. Not too long ago, I put out a video on shooting cadence with the handgun. Something I consider to be very important, and it's something I feel that does not get nearly enough attention. I've been professionally trained more than a few times in the shooting of a handgun, and while taking classes from private instructors, people with military law enforcement backgrounds that then started their own companies, I have been taught blocks of instruction on how to shoot rhythm or how to shoot cadence, depending on what your terminology is. But I went through 2 police academies, and neither academy was cadence or rhythm addressed. We shot hammer pairs or double taps or whatever you want to call them, but nobody ever really addressed what happens and how to manage the gun and control the gun and shoot accurately when you shoot extended strings, 3, 5, 7, 10, maybe even 15 rounds of ammunition. You might be wondering why this is important. Well, and I hate to use law enforcement as my staple example, but we have more videos of law enforcement shootings than we do of citizen shootings. So think about many of the shooting videos you've seen, and of course this is anecdotal evidence, but there's enough of it there to make a substantial case. Think about all those videos you've seen where the officer fired 5, 7, 10, 15 rounds in rapid succession. And then think about the accuracy that was either witnessed in the video or reported later on during the investigation. Generally, the accuracy is not great to abysmal to borderline criminal. I can't blame necessarily the individual who had to shoot under those conditions, because those are real-life, risk-of-life situations. However, I can blame the instructors and the curriculum that was created for the training of that officer to not address how to shoot that fast. Now, it might be said that we don't want people to shoot strings of 5 or 7 or 10 rounds, and I would probably encourage that person to look at the realities of how well, and of course this is a relative term, handguns actually stop human threats. They don't do a great job, not nearly as well as a rifle would, given the same round, same conditions, and same round placement. If these officers haven't been trained, and these people haven't been trained to shoot cadence, and yet they're demonstrating that they're doing it anyway, to me, that says that this is something that's going to naturally occur under stress, or has a high likelihood of naturally occurring under stress. I can't definitively say it's going to happen every single time. And if that's the case, then we are doing them a disservice to a negligent standard of not teaching them how to shoot that fast, if naturally there's a high likelihood that they will. So cadence fire is something that I teach in my handgun courses. Even at my, what you might consider fundamental level handgun course, we're going to cover high rates of fire, strings of fire, 3 rounds, 5 rounds, 7 rounds. It's important because you're going to shoot the gun fast, but you have to be able to maintain a degree of respectable accuracy. The way that I measure that accuracy is basically a cadence target that I came up with, and that target simulates or approximates a really respectable hit zone for incapacitating the human form. So me being a self-defense focused instructor, I'm always thinking about accuracy in terms of anatomy. So you're probably familiar with a target that has scoring zones such as A, B, C. The traditional A zone is quite large. The A zone on my target is 4 by 6, and for my cadence standards, which what we're talking about in this video, I've added a second box inside that box that is 2 by 4 inches. And the whole purpose of this drill that I use it in classes, but something you can obviously work on your own because you can download the target from the sagedynamics.org website, is accuracy and speed are not mutually exclusive. They do not have to be mutually exclusive. At respectable distances, you should be able to fire a string of cadence to, for the target's sake, a 2 by 4 box or a 4 by 6 box in a very small amount of time. What you're looking at now is the UTC anatomy target. It is a really simple but pretty close approximation of critical human anatomy, especially talking about the high thoracic cavity of the chest. The B zone is the larger zone. That's 8.5 by 11, same size as printer paper. That's pretty convenient, but it does cover the heart, the lungs, and many of the great vessels. The 4 by 6 box approximates a good location in the center of the chest to give you a high likelihood, from an ideal presentation anyway, because we're talking about 2-dimensional paper here, of striking the heart and the great vessels and maybe some spinal column, spinal cord, something like that. The smaller box, the 2 by 4 box, is there for even more precision. Now, there's a difference between precision and practical accuracy. The 2 by 4 box, I think, can be easily argued is a very precise point of aim. The 4 by 6 box is also a precise point of aim if we're talking about delivery of rounds to a critical organ of the human body versus a region of organs in the human body. So looking at this problem and addressing it in classes, it was very nebulous of me to tell students to just shoot fast from whatever distance we were shooting at. I felt that many students would excel at those closer distances, such as 3 yards or even closer than that, but when we moved back to 5 or even 7 or further, there was this natural tendency to shoot slower than maybe they needed to. It's very hard to improve our skill if we don't know what too fast is. And of course, there's a lot of different techniques that need to be developed for firearms. We're talking specifically in this video about cadence shooting with accuracy in mind. So I created the Cadence Standards, and I've been playing with this for almost a year at this point, tweaking the times, having my peers shoot it, and seeing what a good, respectable, reasonable average is, but not one that's going to be so easy that cadence isn't actually occurring. If I gave someone, for instance, from the 3 yards, if I gave them 2.5 seconds to fire 7 rounds, you look at what the average split time would have to be to fire those 7 rounds in 2.5 seconds. There isn't a lot of cadence going on. There isn't a lot of recoil occurring, especially at that distance. I believe someone could shoot much faster than that. I'm trying to get people to shoot at least, 4 to 5 rounds a second at those closer ranges, maybe a little bit more. We're talking about 7 rounds. Why 7 rounds? Well, 7 rounds to me seem like a high volume number. The more rounds you fire, the greater your technique is tested. Because one thing cadence definitely helps you develop not only is the ability to shoot fast and accurate, but it helps develop your grip technique, which is why when you look at the scoring zone on this target, you have more leeway on the vertical than you do on the horizontal. The reason I designed it that way is because any kind of horizontal deviation is generally attributed to grip. Any kind of vertical deviation is generally attributed to shot time, your actual press of the trigger during the arc of recoil and reset of the sighting system. Now this drill isn't for iron sights only. In this video we're going to talk about the reduced A zone, which is that 2x4 box. We're going to shoot it from 3, from 5, and from 7. I'm going to demo it using 3 different guns. I'm going to use an Agency Arms modified Glock 19X. I'm going to use a Nighthawk Firehawk, and I'm going to use, kind of as a control, a double action, single action Beretta 92 that has been made much better, of course, by Langdon Tactical. It's the Langdon LTT. Of course, naysayers can say, well, why don't you use a stock double action, single action gun? I don't own one. I feel like you should be performing this cadence standard with whatever it is that you carry. If you carry an OEM stock gun, then that's the standard. If you carry an aftermarket Glock, that's the standard. If you carry a 2011, that's the standard. Someone else being able to compete this with a tricked out race gun kind of gets into that dichotomous argument of, well, you only shot that well because you have a race gun or because you got a dot on your gun. And that same person may also say, well, irons are faster up close. No, they're not. But that's not the point of the video. So let's take a look at the standards. Let's look at 3 yards first. 3 yard standards, 1.6 seconds, 7 rounds. The drill is begun from a point of aim because it's a skill isolation. I could incorporate a draw stroke into the drill, of course, and that's something I may do later, is do a separate par time for draw stroke on this, but I'm really just trying to isolate the skill of firearms control, isolate the technique of recoil management, sight picture management, getting the gun back on target. This is a very, very visual drill. Everything else kind of has to be on autopilot. Your grip will be developed by this drill if you're not able to accomplish it starting out. So there's just one par time. And if you're not getting it, don't get frustrated. Try it from different distances. So let's take a look at 3 yards. 2x4 point of aim, 2 inches by 4 inches in 1.6 seconds, 7 rounds. Times are tight. 1.6 seconds is enough time to get it done correctly. If you're not achieving the par time, keep working on it. Learn to, and I don't want to use the terminology see faster because you literally can only see at the fast speed of light, but learn how to process your behavior. Learn how to process what you're seeing. And after you fire your 7-round string, immediately replay what you saw in your head and think about if what you saw jives with the shot group you're seeing on the target. If you're seeing a lot of horizontal expansion, that's grip. So the next time you run it, start thinking about equalizing that pressure on the gun and helping manage that gun. So now let's take a look at moving it back to 5 yards. 5 yards, you get a little bit more time, 2.4 seconds, but the same point of aim. And this is where some people really start to struggle because they may not be used to shooting cadence or rhythm, if that's what you want to call it, from that extended distance. And finally, we'll take a look at 7 yards, shooting 7 yards, 7 rounds in 3 seconds. So what you saw is my times on 3 different guns from 3, 5, and 7 shooting the par times. I by no means am the fastest shooter in the world, not even close. I have students that regularly have faster split times than me. I've kind of reached my performance wall. I haven't found a way to get any faster, and I'm okay with that. I feel like shooting an average split time of 1.5 to 1.7 is pretty respectable. Every now and then I sneak in a 1.3 or a 1.4, but I have no idea how I did that, and it frustrates me because I'd like to be able to grasp that and hone it. But over my years of shooting, I've always believed that the closer you are to the target, the faster you should be shooting it. Kind of use the analogy or the axiom, if you will, of shoot as fast as possible, not as fast as you can. What that means is, and I've said this in videos before, I believe, is no matter what distance I'm at, if I'm shooting, I'm going to be putting rounds down there as fast as my skill will allow me to get them there. Of course, being realistic, I'm probably going to shoot faster from 3 than I shoot from 25 because I'm shooting fast as possible. Even though from 3 and 5 or 3 and 25, I can pull the trigger at the same speed, relatively speaking. So what I'm looking at is to manage my expectations of performance, because if I want to shoot faster the further back I go, sometimes I have to start accepting a wider shot group. Which brings me to my last point, and this is specifically about cadence, but I think in general, when we're talking about a scoring area or an acceptable hit area, let's talk about the reduced A zone that we have on this target for this particular portion of the drill. It's 2 inches by 4 inches. So if your rounds are anywhere in that 2x4 box, that's a win, that's a pass. For some techniques, we have to get out of the mentality of every round is touching. Of course I can shoot a shot group that looks like one ragged hole on this 2x4 inch box from 3 yards, but I'm probably not going to be able to do it fast. Precision is a nebulous term depending on what we're talking about. You think about artillery, the definition of precision for artillery is much different from the definition of precision for a handgun at 3 yards. I consider the 2x4 and even the 4x6 box to be precision when we're talking about human anatomy on an ideal place threat in the thoracic cavity. So I didn't want to make this video super long, so I broke it into 2. Part 1 is talking just about the reduced A zone, which is the harder target to manage from 3, 5, and 7. So you do, and you may not agree with me, but I did give you a little bit more time, leeways, to manage that smaller accuracy. If you're able to shoot the reduced A zone for time, you probably won't have much of a problem on the second part of the drill, which is the actual A zone, which is 4x6 inches, which we'll address in our next video. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.